Welcome to Steve Draws. I'm Steve, the Dutch illustrator and animator, and I have been doing the 12 days before Christmas drawing challenge, which means I will draw 12 Christmas cards before Christmas. So starting out on the 13th of December until the 24th. All of the videos I've previously have done were done in Procreate, but now I just want to draw something in Adobe Fresco. So I'm just going to open up Fresco and see what happens. And I want to use the live brushes, and especially the watercolor live brushes. I already made a little attempt of using these brushes, but they're quite difficult because you need to practice with this new set of brushes because you are working wet in wet. So I'm going to do a different image, and I already did 2 attempts and I failed a little bit, but I'm going to use the current screen size, and that's 2732 by 2048. And I already made a sketch in Procreate, so I'm going to import that, and you can do that by going to your layers, or here press on this little icon, and then you can import the photo from your library. So I already made a sketch and set it to a PNG and use that as a top layer. And when you press done, then you can change the opacity, and I'm gonna set the blend mode to multiply, and the opacity, I'm just gonna turn down the opacity. Underneath, I'm going to do the first colors, and I'm going to use the live brushes, and that's the second icon on your tool palette, and I'm going to choose watercolor, and I'm just going to build it up like you would do a normal watercolor on paper. So I'm going to use the watercolor wash soft, and here you can change the size. So first I need a big size to do the entire wash, and here you can change the color, and I need a bit of a blue color. And with watercolors you need to build up your color, so you have to start from light to dark. And here you can change the water flow, but first I want to do washes. So the water flow I set to 100%. And the great thing about these brushes is that they really react like real watercolors. So I first need to get rid of the total whites. I'm not going to use total watercolors, so I'm going to do the highlights with a different brush. And these watercolor brushes are default to Adobe Fresco. And you can first do a light wash, and it also reacts like real watercolors. So when you stop, you actually have to do it in one go. So I'm gonna delete this or undo it, and that's the same as in Procreate. Just tap with 2 fingers on the screen. I have to do it in one go. So this is the first wash I'm gonna set, and maybe it is a little bit too light for the camera to capture it. And what you do with these brushes, you fill it with water as well. So if you do a second pass, the colors will flow into each other. So now all the whites are a little bit gone. And when you press harder, you get more color. because this part is a lot darker than the foreground. And now you can select a different color. So maybe I'm gonna change it towards purple-like color. And when you now, fill it in, you can see that it blends in and you can mix your colors, which is what I, like about Adobe Fresco, because there is no other app, Procreate cannot, do this. And maybe add another color to it, maybe a little bit more blue. So in this way, you can build up your colors. And it's still wet in wet. And you can also turn it off. I'm going to show you later. And this is just the background. And when you're doing watercolors, you really have to think ahead, because it is a transparent medium, other than if you're working with gouache. That's more of an opaque medium. But I'm also going to use gouache in this painting, to add the snow. I can make the buildings here, these are some houses. I'm gonna make them a little bit darker. And that's nice with the flow. You can also turn off the water flow so that it flows less, and change the size of your brush. Whoops. Here's some roofs. And it's still wet and wet because this is the background, so it doesn't need to be in focus. It's just a backdrop. Maybe some blacks, to indicate some windows. Maybe even some magenta. See what happens. Add some more water to it. Just leave it like that. Now I'm going to work on the foreground, and I really need to plan this out. Here in the foreground there is a light, you know, and the focus of this image is on this part. So the contrast should be higher than in the back of the painting. So this light is shining on this part of the painting, so it also will cast some light and it will bleed into the snow. So I need some yellows, and the canvas is still not dried up, so you can, you know, play around with the flow of your brush, and that's the opacity of the paint, and also with the water flow. I'm gonna set it to 100% and, you know, build this up. So set this to around 50%, and then I can add some yellow to the already wet paint. So it's going to bleed into the painting, and you know, you can build it up by lifting up your Apple Pencil. And these are the windows, so they also be yellow. And this is the strongest point. Here are some windows as well. So first I need to work on the lighter colors, and then I can build them up slowly. Here are some windows. And it now bleeds into this, but you know, I just want to keep it loose. I'm using this as an underpainting, so I'm going to go over the top with other colors. So this fence is going to be green, so I'll build it up with yellow underneath to get a richer color. Gonna fast forward this first pass because, you know, it takes a longer time, you know, to do a watercolor painting than when you're working with gouache. Now I'm finished with the first pass, and this is all wet and wet. I created some, you know, dynamics in the colors, so they bleed into each other. So, you know, it really looks like watercolor, or kind of like watercolors, because when you want to do watercolors, just do it on paper. But what you can do in Adobe Fresco is dry this layer. When you press on the three little dots, then here is an icon which says dry layer. So when I tap it, all the colors are dried. So now I can add some details to the rest of the painting to define it a little bit more. And just want to work on the door and, you know, make some details work. And the door is a little bit green but very dark. This is a very dark part, and over it I will paint in a different layer with gouache. I will paint the snow. So I'm gonna zoom in a little, and I still have the sketch of the painting on this layer, and it's set to multiply, so I can still see where I need to go. There are some different kinds of brushes. You have 4 different brushes, and I'm going to use the round detailed brush and check the settings, set the water flow to 0, and start to paint with it. This is a window pane. Here's a little window. Fresco is quite an expensive app to use, because I think it costs around $10 a month, or if you have an Adobe Creative Cloud membership, this will be for free. And I have an Adobe Creative Cloud membership, so I can use this freely, because I use Photoshop, Premiere, Audition, Adobe Animate. And I'm going to use a little bit more water to blend it in. Because I really need the contrast now to paint over it. And you can also use pure water by pressing on this little circle, and you can, place it wherever you want. And then you just paint with pure water. So that's good for blending, but it also washes out the color. And you can also select colors the same as in Procreate by just tapping on the canvas and then select the color, and now I can blend them in. And I really haven't used these watercolors in Adobe Fresco, so for me it's also a learning experience, by just testing things out. Just gonna select a darker green, and I'm gonna set it to 0% of water flow, because here's a fence and I need this to be stronger shape, so you can define the fence. And when you press lighter, you get less paint, and when you press harder, you get more paint. Here's a little part of the fence, but it's all covered by foliage and snow. So this is a very slow process, you know, just to build up the colors. I don't like this wash, so let me see if I can make it blend a little bit more, so I need more water again. Maybe dry the layer again, because this is all wet. And I'll go over it again. So it has the feeling of watercolors, but it's not exactly the same. I want to try to find a way to, you know, control these brushes or get the technique right. There's a lot of trees with snow on it, but you know, it just needs some contrast. With all the branches and leaves, or well, the leaves are gone. They're all covered with snow, but you also need some darker values to make them pop out. There's also a tree here, but most of it is covered with snow. So there's just a lot of branches. Here underneath is the shadow of the bushes. Gonna dry the layer again because I need some more details, and otherwise it will blend into the rest of the painting. Because I also need to draw some branches up here. So now I've finished with the watercolors. I'm now going to create a new layer, and there I'm going to use a different brush, and this is a kind of a gouache brush. And let me just see if I can find one in the painting set. I'm going to use the Cezanne number 1. And with this I'm going to paint the snow on top of this painting. So I'm going to choose not a total white, and there's different options. You can use HSB sliders or the color wheel. I need more of a blue tone to the white of the snow. I'm gonna use this to do the first layer of snow, and gonna fast forward this again, otherwise the video will be too long. So the painting is almost finished. I created a new layer just for the snow. You can turn that off by pressing on the little eye. And I made another one which is set to multiply. And there I created with the watercolor brushes with gray tone some more washes to make the front a little bit darker. And on top of that I created some more highlights in the snow, and I'm just gonna finish up with the Cezanne #1. Just some highlights on the snow. And you know, if you want to learn new software, you know, you just need to practice with it, and will not be perfect at the first drawing you're doing, because you need to, you know, understand how new brushes work and how the program works. So I'm going to continue doing some watercolors in Adobe Fresco, but it's not very good for your batteries on your iPad, because it drains a lot of your battery usage, because when you use the watercolor brushes, you know, that takes up a lot of CPU time of your iPad Pro. So this is day 11 of the 12 days before Christmas. Tomorrow I'm going to do another painting in Adobe Fresco, and you know, with drawing in new software or new brushes, you know, you just have to test the things out. This is not a perfect drawing, but I've learned a lot of new things about live watercolors in Adobe Fresco. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, you can subscribe to my channel if you want to, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because each time I upload a new video, you get a notification. Season's greetings, and drawing is fun, and practice makes perfect. See you next time. Doodles!